Olympic weightlifting for combat sports is a controversial topic. I posted a video a while back discussing my views on using weightlifting for MMA, but for MMA and grappling, I believe that various weightlifting movements are crucial for overall strength and power development. Now, one of the issues with traditional weightlifting is the idea of technical proficiency and having to catch the barbell. Now, both of these things take time to learn and adjust to. The idea of catching the bar takes mobility that you might not have and might aggravate injuries or previous injuries you may have had. The technical aspect of learning the Olympic lift, the lifts are a sport itself, and it takes years for those top-level athletes to learn it. For you to spend the time to do that, it's like learning two different sports. So one option is to use weightlifting derivatives. Now, if you go into the Sweet Science of Fighting Underground, that's your whole course on weightlifting derivatives by James Ramsey. You can check that out. But I'm going to take you through one of the exercises that's used in most of the research, which is the hang high pull or the clean hang high pull. Now, I've seen this exercise butchered over and over again by various athletes. It looks like shit when most people do it. So I'm going to show you how to get the most out of it. The biggest mistake I've seen with this exercise is it's turned into an upper body exercise. The hang high pull is mostly lower body. All of the propulsive force that goes vertical needs to come from the legs and from the hips. Now, why would you do a hang clean high pull versus a hang power clean? Well, as I mentioned, obviously you have the technical proficiency, you also have the mobility issues. But if we look at some of the research, we see that the pull variation versus the catch variation, so the clean hang high pull versus the hang power clean, we see potentially greater improvements in jump performance, propulsive forces from doing the hang variation. Also, the hang variation lets you train at what's known as optimal loading or optimal power loading. And that's using a load that maximizes power output. And from the research, we see this is around 120% of your power clean. So if you're doing the hang power clean, you cannot reach these numbers. Whereas if you're using the weightlifting derivative, you get to overload force and velocity just by removing that catch phase. So there becomes more benefits than just lessening the learning curve, if that makes sense. So I'm going to show you a bunch of videos on me showing you this exercise. I'm going to run through some main technical points. Now, the first one is the hang position. If someone tells you to do a Romanian deadlift to get into the hang position, walk away. The weightlifting setup for the hang position and the Romanian deadlift are completely different movements. The Romanian deadlift involves pushing the hips back and loading the hamstrings and the glutes. If you push the hips back to set up for an Olympic lift, you've already set yourself up for failure. The only way you can move is with your hips forward and the bar going forward. When you're setting up for the hang position with the hang high pull or hang power clean or whatever it is, you need to have the weight in the center of your foot and you're going to be over, and your shoulders are going to be over the bar. So to show you the difference here, this would be a Romanian deadlift, pushing the hips back, weight on my heels, and this would be the hang position in a hang power clean. As you can see, my shoulders are over the bar in the hang power clean with my legs bent, whereas the Romanian deadlift, I'm behind the bar with my hips. It's a subtle difference in that, but it will make the biggest difference to your technique, being able to be over the bar in the hang power clean position versus hips back. Now, the second thing is when you push. So most people learning this exercise start with the lower back. So they get into the position and the first thing they do is this. The problem with that is you're pulling with your back and upper body instead of pushing with your legs. The cue is to push with your legs. You're always trying to push the floor away as a typical cue used when squatting or deadlifting. You can use the same cue. You want to start in this position and you want to push with your legs first. Pushing with your legs first means your shoulders stay over. You see, when I'm in this position, in the hang high pull, I'm pushing. Whereas if I start here and I start with the back, this happens. So you can see now my knees are under the bar here instead of staying over. The problem with being in a position where you make your back go first and you end up like this, the only way to be able to get extra momentum for the bar is to keep extending the hips and to try extend. You end up leaning back like this and the bar goes in front. And that will severely limit the weight you can use. Remember, we're trying to use the weightlifting derivative or the hang high pull to overload the exercise. And if we have to limit the weight because our technique can't let us get to those loads, then it becomes a moot point. So the idea is to stay over the bar, push with the legs, and then once you get tall, then I'm extending. I'm not coming forward with the hips and then continuing to go back and letting the bar come out. Now, when you're keeping the bar close, it's about keeping the lats tight, almost like you're squeezing oranges or tennis balls in your armpits, and you're keeping this position here to keep the bar close. Moving to when we finish the actual hang high pull. It becomes a sequence between extending your ankles, knees, and hips, so the typical triple extension, but also shrugging the shoulders and pulling the bar up your torso. So in slow motion, come over the bar, come up. That's it in slow motion. It's hard to do slowly. Up and close. You can see in the videos that I'm showing you of me doing with load how it looks. But the idea is that the elbows point out and the bar comes up the shirt. The elbows don't point back. So if the elbows point back and you do this, it becomes a reverse curl. And that's not what you want out of exercise. You want to extend and pull the bar all the way up to your chest height. Obviously, you might be restricted by mobility, but the momentum you generate from your legs is going to help you get the bar and the weight there. So a couple of key points to remember when doing the hang high pull. One, use straps. You're not doing this as a grip exercise. You're doing it to overload your legs and your upper body. And to do that, you need to use straps. So use your straps. Secondly, you're only doing 3 to 5 reps, if that. You want to be able to do these with maximum intent. These should not be done for high reps or very high volume. Thirdly, you don't have to remove the catch phase all the time if you are proficient in, say, the hang power clean. Still use the hang power clean if you really like it. But this is just another option if you cannot do the Olympic lifts for whatever reason, or you don't want to take the time to learn them. You can use a simple exercise like this. Now, this still has a learning curve. I've showed you some points that take time to learn, but once you do get it down, it's well worth doing. If you're a striker, I tend to veer away from heavier, I guess, weightlifting style exercises, especially in terms of weightlifting derivatives. I prefer these more for grappling-based arts, MMA and jiu-jitsu, etc. And I believe they have the best carryover and transfer to those martial arts. Now, if you like this video, please let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe. I'm going to have some more weightlifting derivative videos for you, including weightlifting complexes, snatch high pulls, all of those there to take you through step-by-step how to do them, how to implement them within your training. So please check the description as well. This is Sweet Science of Fighting Underground. It has all the training programs, online courses, and a private community.